Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you today to remind you of one simple but powerful truth. Don't lose hope. You may be facing circumstances that seem impossible, challenges that appear insurmountable, or dreams that feel distant. But I want you to know something. God will do the unexpected for you. Don't lose hope, for God will do the unexpected for you. Life, in all its twists and turns, can sometimes leave us feeling as though we're walking through a maze of challenges with no clear way out. In these moments, it is easy to succumb to doubt, to give in to the pressure of circumstances that seem overwhelming, and to believe that perhaps the dream we once had is slipping further out of reach. But I stand before you today with a powerful message. Don't lose hope. Even when the world tells you that all is lost, know that God is working behind the scenes, preparing you for something far greater than you can see in the present. Hope is not just a fleeting emotion or a passing thought. It is a force, it is a divine strength that anchors our souls, especially in the hardest of times. Hope isn't a mere wish that things might get better. It is an active, powerful force that gives us the ability to keep moving forward when everything around us is shaking. Hope is an expectation, not of what is simply possible, but of what is divinely promised. When we place our hope in God, we trust in His ability to bring us through any trial and to deliver us to a place of peace and fulfillment. It is this hope that holds us steady when our hearts are heavy, when the storms of life seem unrelenting, and when we feel as though we have reached the end of our rope. Yet, it is easy to forget the power of hope when we face moments of discouragement or hardship. We are conditioned to look at the visible, at what we can see with our eyes and touch with our hands. We rely on our understanding of the world around us. But hope calls us to look beyond the physical, to the divine possibilities that God holds for us. It calls us to believe that even when things appear bleak, there is a greater plan unfolding, a plan that we might not fully understand, but one that will ultimately lead to something better than we could ever imagine. One of the most important lessons we must learn in our walk with God is that His timing is perfect. How often do we find ourselves in situations where we feel as though we have waited long enough, or that we are running out of time? Perhaps you've been praying for a breakthrough, a change, a shift in your circumstances, but all you see is delay. Let me remind you that God is not bound by time as we are. He sees the entire picture, from beginning to end, while we only see the present moment. The delays we experience are often moments of divine preparation. The things we desire may not come immediately, but God's timing is always aligned with the perfect fulfillment of His will. There is no need to rush God. His process may seem slow, but it is always intentional. And while we wait, we are being shaped, refined, and made ready for the unexpected blessing He has in store for us. It's also important to recognize that God's ways are often higher than ours. As humans, we make plans based on our limited understanding of the world. We set goals and timelines for ourselves, thinking that our way is the best way. But God's wisdom far surpasses our own. His vision for our lives is infinitely greater than anything we could ever conceive. He knows the desires of our hearts, and He knows exactly what we need, even when we don't fully understand it ourselves. We must trust that His plan for us is far better than any plan we could make on our own. His ways may seem mysterious, even unexpected, but they are always perfect, and they will always lead us to the place of ultimate fulfillment. Now, I want to speak to those of you who are in the midst of a difficult season, who feel as though the struggle will never end. It is during these times that we must remember that perseverance precedes the unexpected blessing. The road to breakthrough is not always a straight line. There are obstacles, setbacks, and challenges that will test our resolve, but do not be discouraged. Every challenge you face is an opportunity for God to refine you, to build your character, and to prepare you for the blessing that is ahead. The Bible tells us that those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. When you persevere, when you continue to press forward despite the setbacks, you are growing stronger, and God is positioning you for a great victory. Your breakthrough is often just around the corner, but you must keep moving forward with faith and determination. And this leads us to the key to unlocking the unexpected: faith. Faith is the gateway to the impossible. It is through faith that we open the door to the miracles God has for us. The journey of faith is not one of certainty, but of trust. trusting that even when we can't see how things will work out, God is working all things together for our good. Faith does not demand answers, it simply trusts that God is faithful. It is through faith that we step into the realm of the supernatural, where God's intervention becomes evident in our lives. When you have faith, you are declaring that you believe in the power of God to do what is humanly impossible. And when you walk in faith, you open yourself up to God's unexpected miracles. Expect the unexpected. This is perhaps one of the most thrilling aspects of our walk with God. We serve a God who is full of surprises. When you least expect it, when you feel as though you are at your lowest point, God can step in and turn everything around. This is the beauty of living by faith. God doesn't work within the confines of our expectations. He exceeds them. You may be in the midst of a storm, but remember, God is the God of the unexpected. He will show up in ways you never imagined, and He will do things that leave you in awe of His power and His goodness. So, no matter where you are today, no matter how dark the valley may seem, don't lose hope. Hold on to the belief that God is working, even in the silence, even in the waiting. He will do the unexpected for you, because He is a God of miracles, and He is always faithful to His promises. Keep trusting, keep hoping, and expect that something greater is coming your way. God's timing is perfect. We live in a world that demands immediate results. We've grown accustomed to instant gratification, whether it's through technology, communication, or even our careers and personal lives. We want things now, and we often find ourselves impatient when they don't come on our terms or within our time frame. We ask, why is this taking so long? Or when will my breakthrough come? The frustration we experience in these moments is natural, but it's important to remember that God's timing is not our timing. His timing is not dictated by our watch, but by His infinite wisdom and understanding of what is best for us. When we look at our lives, we often see pieces of a puzzle that don't seem to fit together. We can only see the present moment, and sometimes that moment feels like we are stuck in a season of waiting, perhaps even feeling as though we're losing time. But here's the truth. What seems delayed is often a divine pause. It's not an obstacle, it's a moment of preparation. You see, God doesn't rush things because He knows that everything in our lives is connected to a greater purpose. What may feel like a delay in our lives is simply God's way of getting us ready for what He has prepared for us. Just like a seed in the ground takes time to grow into a tree, so too must we wait for the right time for things to come to fruition. If a seed were to sprout prematurely, it would not have the strength to endure the storms it would eventually face. In the same way, we may feel ready for our breakthrough, but God in His perfect wisdom knows that we need more time for growth, refinement, and understanding before we can truly handle the blessing He has for us. Trusting in God's timing requires us to step out of our own understanding and lean into His. It's a call to faith, knowing that He sees the end from the beginning. When we try to rush things, we risk missing the lessons, the growth, and the transformation that come with the wait. We risk missing the opportunity to be fully prepared for what He's about to bring into our lives. But when we trust His timing, we allow ourselves to be molded into the person who is ready to receive His best. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes 3:1 that to everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. This means that nothing happens by accident and everything unfolds according to a divine purpose. There are times of waiting, times of preparation, and times of action. Each of these moments is orchestrated by God, and each is necessary for the full unfolding of His plan in our lives. It's not always easy to wait, but it's in those waiting seasons that we learn the most about who we are and who God is. We learn to trust Him more deeply and to rely on His wisdom rather than our own. In those moments when we feel like nothing is happening, remember that God is always working, even if we can't see it. His plan is unfolding behind the scenes, and He is aligning everything in your life for the right moment. Trust that He has not forgotten about you and that the delay is not a denial. It's simply part of His perfect process. The story of Joseph in the Bible is a beautiful example of trusting in God's timing. Joseph had dreams of greatness, but his journey to those dreams was filled with trials, betrayal, and years of waiting. From being sold into slavery by his brothers to being unjustly imprisoned, Joseph's life seemed to be one delay after another. But in each of those moments, God was working behind the scenes, preparing him for the position of leadership he was destined for. Had Joseph been promoted at any point during his early life, he would not have been prepared for the responsibility of ruling Egypt and saving nations from famine. God's timing was perfect, and in the end, Joseph was able to see that all those delays and struggles were part of God's greater plan. In our lives, we must adopt a similar mindset. We must remember that our waiting is never in vain. There is purpose in every season, even the seasons of silence and uncertainty. It's in those moments that God is preparing us for what He has in store, shaping us, strengthening us, and making us ready for what's ahead. So no matter how long you've been waiting, don't lose heart. Trust in God's perfect timing. He sees the full picture and He knows exactly when the time is right for you. His delays are not denials, but simply part of His beautiful process of preparing you for something far greater than you could ever imagine. Trust His timing, for it is always perfect. And when the time comes, you will see that what He has for you is more than worth the wait. God's ways are higher than ours. We as human beings are limited by our understanding, our experiences, and our perspective. We make plans, set goals, and carefully craft our paths according to what we think is best for us. We look at the circumstances around us and try to predict the future based on what we can see and comprehend. But God's ways are not bound by our limitations. His understanding is infinite, and His plans for our lives extend far beyond anything we could ever conceive. In our human nature, we often want to control the narrative. We make detailed plans, hoping to shape our future in a way that aligns with our desires and expectations. And when things don't go according to the script we've written, we can feel confused, frustrated, or even disheartened. But what we must remember is that God's plans are always greater than ours, and His ways are often mysterious and unexpected, yet they are always perfect. When we trust God, we are placing our faith in a plan that is far beyond our comprehension. We are embracing a future that is full of endless possibilities that we may not even fully understand at this moment. The reality is we cannot always see the full picture. We may only see the present or the next step in front of us, but God sees everything, the beginning, the middle, and the end. He knows where He is taking us, even when the road seems uncertain. Sometimes the path God leads us down is not what we would have chosen for ourselves. There may be detours, setbacks, and moments of confusion. But we must trust that these unexpected twists are part of His divine plan. God doesn't need to fit His plans into the box of our understanding. His wisdom is far superior to ours, and what may seem like a detour or delay is often a redirection towards something greater. In the grand design of God's purpose, what we might view as an obstacle is actually a stepping stone towards something much more significant. There are countless examples in the Bible where God's plans exceeded human understanding, and where His ways were not at all what people expected. One of the clearest examples is the story of Moses. Moses was called by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, but his journey was far from straightforward. He was raised as a prince in Pharaoh's palace, only to flee into the wilderness after he killed an Egyptian. For 40 years he lived as a shepherd in exile. If Moses had planned his life, he probably would have never imagined he would return to Egypt to confront Pharaoh. But God had a much greater plan. What seemed like a period of useless wandering was actually God's preparation for the moment that would change the destiny of an entire nation. Another example is the life of David. David, a young shepherd, was anointed as the future king of Israel, but instead of immediately ascending to the throne, he spent years running from King Saul, who sought to kill him. David's path to kingship was filled with hardship, rejection, and battles. Yet, in all of it, God was shaping David into the leader He had called him to be. If David had written his own story, he might have preferred a more comfortable route to the throne, but God's plan was far superior. David's trials were the training ground for the greatness that lay ahead. When we trust in God's ways, we are choosing to relinquish control of our plans and submit to the knowledge that His plan is perfect. Even if it doesn't make sense at the time, we must acknowledge that His wisdom far surpasses our own, and His timing is flawless. It's often in the moments of uncertainty or unexpected turns that we see the hand of God guiding us, leading us to outcomes that we could never have imagined. Think about the times in your life when things didn't go the way you planned. Perhaps you faced a disappointment or a setback, And at the time it felt like failure. But now looking back, you realize that God was working behind the scenes, using those challenges to bring you to a better place. God's ways may seem confusing in the moment, but they are always designed to bring about a greater good. He uses the unexpected to accomplish His purposes, and when we trust Him, we position ourselves to experience outcomes that far surpass our wildest dreams. In Isaiah 55:8-9, God reminds us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This scripture speaks to the vast difference between our limited human understanding and the limitless wisdom of God. His plans are always better than ours, even when they are unexpected or confusing. When we align our hearts with God's purpose and trust in His direction, we open ourselves up to experiences that exceed what we could have ever planned for ourselves. Trusting in God's higher ways requires surrendering our own desires, acknowledging that He knows what is best for us, and accepting that His plan is better than anything we could create on our own. It means having the courage to follow where He leads, even when the path is unclear, because we trust that He is guiding us toward a future that is more beautiful and fulfilling than we could have ever dreamed. So, my friends, do not be discouraged when life doesn't unfold the way you expect. Embrace the unknown, trust in God's plan, and know that His ways are higher than ours. Even when the road seems difficult or the path seems unclear, trust that He is leading you towards something far greater than you could ever imagine. His ways are not just higher, they are perfect, and in the end they will always lead to the most beautiful and fulfilling outcome. Perseverance precedes the unexpected blessing. This is a principle that many of us may struggle to fully understand, especially when we're in the middle of a difficult season. We want the breakthrough, the blessing, the victory, but often we don't realize that it is the very trials we face that prepare us for the great things that lie ahead. The road to the unexpected blessing is not always smooth or easy. It is frequently paved with challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But it is through endurance, through perseverance, that God molds our character, builds our strength, and prepares us for the greatness He has destined for us. When you find yourself in a season of struggle, it's important to remember that the trials are not the end of the story, but rather the beginning of the transformation. God doesn't waste pain or difficulty. He uses them as tools to shape us, refine us, and draw out the potential that is lying dormant within us. Every challenge you face is an opportunity for growth. Every obstacle is a chance for you to trust God more deeply, to lean into His strength, and to develop the resilience that will carry you through future battles. We often want to bypass the tough times. We want to get to the good stuff, the breakthroughs, the rewards, the moments of victory. But the truth is, it's during the hard times that we are prepared for those blessings. If we were to jump from one success to another without the trials in between, we would not have the strength, wisdom, or maturity to handle the responsibility of those blessings. It is in the furnace of affliction that God purifies us, refining our hearts and our character. If we endure, we are being made ready for what is ahead. Take a moment and think about the process of refining gold. The gold is put into a furnace, heated to extremely high temperatures, and all the impurities are burned away. It is through this process that the gold becomes pure and valuable. Similarly, when we go through trials, it's as though God is allowing us to be refined in the fire, removing the impurities of doubt, fear, and weakness, so that we can be made into the person He wants us to be, strong, pure, and capable of handling the blessings He has in store for us. It is also in our perseverance that we learn to trust God more fully. When things are going well, it's easy to praise God, but when things get tough, that's when our faith is tested. In those moments, we have the choice to either give up or to push forward, trusting that God is with us. Our faith is not built during times of ease, it is built during times of difficulty. Each time we push through a challenge, we build spiritual muscle. And we learn that God is faithful even when the road is rough. There is a powerful truth in knowing that your breakthrough is closer than you think. Often, when we are just a step away from the breakthrough, it feels like we are further from it than ever. The journey may seem long, the obstacles insurmountable, and the waiting unbearable. But in those moments, God is working. He is orchestrating the timing, the circumstances, and the people involved. And at just the right moment, He will open the door to the blessing He has prepared for you. The Bible tells us in James 1:12, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love Him." This verse reminds us that perseverance is not in vain. The trial is not forever, and the reward for those who endure is great. God sees every tear, every prayer, every step of faith you take as you navigate through the hard times. And in due time, He will reward your endurance with blessings that you could never have imagined. The story of Abraham is another powerful example of perseverance leading to the unexpected blessing. God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, yet Abraham and his wife Sarah were unable to have children for many years. They faced the pain of infertility, and as time went on, it seemed as though the promise would never come to pass. But God had not forgotten His promise. Abraham's perseverance through the long years of waiting eventually led to the birth of Isaac, the son through whom the covenant promise would be fulfilled. Abraham had to endure years of waiting, years of believing against all odds, but God's timing was perfect, and in the end, the blessing was far greater than he could have imagined. Your life may feel like a long and difficult journey, but know this: your perseverance is not for nothing. Every trial, every struggle, every moment of endurance is preparing you for the blessing that God has in store for you. And just as Abraham's perseverance led to the fulfillment of God's promises, so too will your perseverance lead you to the fulfillment of the dreams and promises God has spoken over your life. The Apostle Paul encourages us in Romans 5:3-4. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. These words remind us that perseverance is the pathway to transformation. It produces character, strengthens our hope, and positions us to receive the blessings God has prepared. The challenges you face are not meaningless. They are the very thing that is molding you into the person who can carry the weight of the blessing that is coming. So, no matter how long the road may seem, keep going. Even when you feel weary, even when the journey seems uncertain, know that God is with you. Your breakthrough is closer than you think. And every step you take in perseverance is bringing you one step closer to the incredible blessing that lies ahead. Trust God's process and continue to endure, for your reward is on the way. Faith opens the door to the impossible. Faith is not simply a passive belief, it is an active trust in the unseen, an unwavering conviction that God is who He says He is and that He will do what He has promised to do. When we walk by faith, we open ourselves up to the incredible possibilities that God has in store for us, even when we cannot see the way forward. Faith becomes the key that unlocks the door to the impossible, allowing us to step into realms where natural limitations no longer apply. In a world that values reason, logic, and evidence, faith often feels like a leap into the unknown. We are conditioned to want all the answers, to have everything planned out and understood before taking the next step. But the beauty of faith is that it does not require us to have all the answers. It simply requires us to trust in the one who holds all the answers. It is not about seeing the entire picture or knowing how everything will unfold. Faith is about believing that even in the midst of uncertainty, God is in control and that He will show up at just the right moment. Think about the story of Peter walking on water. Jesus called Peter to come to Him on the water, and for a moment Peter stepped out of the boat and began walking toward Jesus. But as he walked, he began to notice the wind and the waves, and fear crept in. He started to sink, but Jesus immediately reached out His hand and pulled him up. Peter's faith opened the door to the impossible. He was walking on water, something that defies natural laws, but it was his focus on Jesus and his trust in His command that allowed him to experience the miraculous. The moment Peter took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the circumstances around him, doubt crept in, and the impossible became impossible again. Faith is not about ignoring the reality around us. It's about choosing to trust in God's ability to work in the midst of that reality. Faith opens the door to miracles because it invites God's supernatural power into the natural world. It's not about how much faith we have, it's about the object of our faith. Even a small amount of faith in the right God can move mountains. Jesus tells us that if we have faith as small as a mustard seed, we can move mountains. Matthew 17:20. The power is not in the size of our faith, but in the power of the God in whom we place our faith. When we walk by faith, we invite God to move on our behalf, to do what we cannot do on our own. Faith shifts our focus from our limitations to God's limitless possibilities. There is a powerful story in the Bible of a woman who had been suffering from a bleeding condition for 12 years. She had spent all her money on doctors, but no one could heal her. She heard that Jesus was coming to town, and she believed that if she could just touch the hem of his garment, she would be healed. In a crowded street, she pressed through the crowd, and when she touched the fringe of Jesus' robe, she was immediately healed. Jesus turned around and said, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." Luke 8:48. It wasn't just the act of touching his garment that healed her. It was her faith, her belief that Jesus could do the impossible, that opened the door to her miracle. This story is a powerful reminder that faith is the key to unlocking God's miracles. It's not about having a perfect understanding of how God works or when he will move. It's about trusting that he is able, that he is willing, and that he is faithful to fulfill his promises. Faith is what connects us to the supernatural realm of God's power. It's what allows us to experience the impossible, to see breakthroughs that defy logic, and to witness miracles that only God could orchestrate. The key to walking by faith is to understand that it is not about our strength or ability. We may not have all the answers or see how things will work out, but faith requires that we trust God to show up in the moment. It requires us to step out of the boat, to take that leap, even when we can't see the ground beneath us. And when we do that, we open the door to God's intervention. The impossible becomes possible, not because of our own efforts, but because of the power of the one we trust. Faith doesn't just open the door to the impossible in the big, dramatic moments. It also opens the door to miracles in the everyday situations of life. When you choose to trust God with your finances, your relationships, your health, or your dreams, you are opening yourself up to the incredible things he can do in those areas. The breakthrough may not always look the way you expect, but when you trust God with every area of your life, you invite his supernatural power to work in ways that exceed your imagination. And just as we've seen in Scripture, faith often invites God to move when we least expect it. Sometimes our breakthrough comes in moments when we feel at our weakest or when we think all hope is lost. But that is the very moment when God's power is most evident. The more impossible the situation appears, the more room there is for God to display his glory. So, don't be afraid to walk by faith. Trust that God will show up at just the right time, even when the circumstances don't seem to make sense. Your faith, no matter how small, is the key that opens the door to the impossible. With God, all things are possible. Keep trusting, keep believing, and watch as he does the miraculous in your life in ways you never imagined. Expect the unexpected. God is a God of surprises. In our human nature, we often want to plan everything, to know exactly what's coming and how things will unfold. But God, in his infinite wisdom, delights in surprising us in ways we cannot anticipate. Just when we think we have everything figured out, when we feel like we've reached the end of our resources or our patience, God steps in and changes our circumstances. It is in those unexpected moments that we often experience the full power of his presence and see his glory revealed in ways that go beyond our understanding. When we talk about expecting the unexpected, it's not about anticipating something random or chaotic. It's about trusting that God is actively working on our behalf, even when we can't see it, and knowing that he is able to intervene in the most surprising and extraordinary ways. Our circumstances may seem bleak, our options limited, but God specializes in doing things that defy logic, that surpass human expectation, and that bring us to a place of awe and wonder. One of the most profound examples of this can be seen in the story of the Israelites at the Red Sea. The Israelites had just been freed from slavery in Egypt, and as they made their way toward the promised land, they were confronted with an impossible situation. A massive sea in front of them and the Egyptian army pursuing them from behind. It seemed like there was no way out. But God, in his divine timing, caused the sea to part, allowing the Israelites to walk through on dry land. Just when all hope seemed lost, God showed up in the most unexpected way and delivered his people. The unexpected moment was not just a miracle of physical salvation. It was a display of God's power and his ability to transform hopeless situations into opportunities for his glory to shine. The Bible is full of stories of God stepping in at unexpected moments to change the lives of his people. Think of the story of Ruth, a young widow who found herself in a foreign land, destitute and without a clear future. Yet, through a series of seemingly random events, she met Boaz, a wealthy relative, and eventually became the great-grandmother of King David. Ruth could have never imagined that her simple act of faithfulness would lead her to a life of honor and significance. In her moment of uncertainty, God orchestrated a divine connection that not only changed her life, but also had a lasting impact on the entire nation of Israel. Similarly, when we find ourselves in moments of uncertainty, when we feel like our circumstances are too complicated or our dreams are too far out of reach, we must remember that God often works in the unexpected. He is not limited by our plans, our timing, or our understanding. When we expect the unexpected, we open ourselves to the possibility that God may be preparing us for something beyond our wildest dreams. It's easy to lose hope when we feel stuck or when the road ahead seems unclear. But the power of expectation is that it shifts our focus from what seems impossible to what is possible with God. Expecting the unexpected means that we trust in God's ability to intervene in our lives in ways we cannot predict. It's about knowing that even in the midst of our struggles, God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating events, aligning people, and opening doors that we couldn't have foreseen. And in those moments when we feel like there's no way forward, we must trust that God is right there, ready to step in and change our circumstances in the most surprising and beautiful ways. The story of Sarah and Abraham provides another powerful example. Sarah had been barren for many years, and she was well beyond the age of childbearing when God told Abraham that he would be the father of many nations. Abraham and Sarah could not fathom how this promise would come to pass, but God, in his perfect timing, made the impossible possible. When Sarah laughed at the thought of having a child in her old age, God said, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Genesis 18:14. Despite their doubts, God fulfilled his promise, and Sarah bore Isaac, the child of promise. God's timing and method were unexpected, but the result was a miracle that no one could have anticipated. This is what we must remember. God's ways are often beyond our understanding, and his plans are often more magnificent than we could ever imagine. When we trust him and expect the unexpected, we position ourselves to receive the blessings, breakthroughs, and miracles he has planned for us. Even when it feels like we are in a season of waiting, God is at work, and he may be preparing to surprise us in ways we cannot yet fathom. So, don't lose hope. Don't let the disappointment of the present moment cause you to forget that God is still working, even when you can't see it. Keep your heart open and your expectations high, knowing that God delights in showing up in ways that exceed our wildest dreams. He will bring the right people into your life at the right time. He will open doors that no one can shut, and he will make a way where there seems to be no way. Expect that he will do something amazing for you, even when you least expect it. Your breakthrough is coming, and it might just come in a way you never saw coming. In conclusion, my friends, don't lose hope, for God will do the unexpected for you. We serve a God who is not bound by time or circumstance, whose ways are higher than our ways, and whose plans are far greater than anything we could ever imagine. Hope is the anchor that sustains us, even in the midst of the storm, and faith is the key that opens the door to the impossible. As we walk through life, we must remember that God's timing is perfect, his plans are for our good, and his ways are always higher than ours. Understand that perseverance precedes the blessing. Every trial, every challenge, every moment of hardship is part of the process that prepares us for the greatness that God has destined for us. Trust in his plan, even when it doesn't make sense, because the victory you seek is closer than you think. And always expect the unexpected. God is a God of surprises, and he is working behind the scenes in ways we cannot see. Just when you think the door is closed, just when you feel there's no way out, God will open doors that no man can shut, and he will do more than you could ever ask or imagine. So, hold fast to hope. Walk by faith and know that the best is yet to come. The breakthrough you've been waiting for, the miracle you've been praying for is closer than you think. Trust in God's ability to do the unexpected and rest in the assurance that He who has begun a good work in you will bring it to completion. Keep moving forward, for your miracle is on the way. God is about to show up in your life in ways you never expected. Believe it, receive it, expect it.